Hi, everybody. I'm Bryan Mudd, a fan of South Plains politics. Here's your talking points for this week. Well, most states allow folks to register to vote online. Texas does not. Would it surprise you to know that some of us already do? And some elected leaders say the state's new voting laws make it easier to vote. But for those who really need it to be easier, that might be a different story.
From the studios of KAMC Television in Lubbock, your local election headquarters. This is Talking Points with Bryan Mudd.
Thanks for being with us. Also this week, the thrill of victory. It appears the weatherization of the state's power grid, albeit incomplete, and the changes made after last year's deadly freeze held up under the state's biggest cold blast so far this winter. The only outages caused by ice and related problems on power lines, and that's a huge win for Governor Abbott politically, just as his challengers start to reveal their plans to fix a grid that now appears to much of the public to already be fixed. But the cost of all the weatherization could still derail this politically. The total could approach some $20 billion, and yes, we'll eventually pay for a lot of that. But what cost equals someone's life, right? People died in last year's power outages, and spending money on public safety usually seems like a good investment. Another example of that being installed right now in Lubbock. After talk of this for decades, the Lubbock City Council decided the technology and the price was finally right to install tornado sirens all over town, and our Landry Sena has more.
We're out installing one of our 45 tornado sirens, or outdoor warning system. That's what they're geared for, is the outdoor alerting the outdoor public of impending severe weather. Whenever we put out our request for proposals, we asked for companies to submit what they thought would cover the entire city limits of Lubbock.
This goes to show the city did a lot of research before picking the site of where the sirens are installed.
They cover anywhere from 1.5 miles to 2 miles, depending on atmospheric conditions and weather conditions, wind, and all that. So it's a mesh network, if you would, they build on each other. One siren by itself will not function as well as having 3 or 4 sirens around helping propagate that sound.
The approved budget for the project was $980,000. Mowdy explains why a system like this is needed in Lubbock.
You can't guarantee that cell phone networks will always work. You can't guarantee that the wireless emergency alerts always work. People turn those off on their cell phones. You may not be around a cell phone or a TV or a radio or any other type of alert.
He also explains how you can expect a testing or when the sirens will go off.
On the emergency management webpage, we will have an outdoor warning system tab that will communicate testing and activation guidelines, as well as show general locations of where the sirens are located. And then each week leading up to the test, we will communicate that out to the public and on our social media channels.
That's Landry Sena reporting. Pleased to welcome in candidate for Lubbock Mayor Adam Hernandez. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Along with what we're talking about here, what would you be willing to invest some tax money in as an investment for Lubbock's people? You know, it could be public safety or business investment. What would be on your wish list as mayor?
Yeah, so public safety is a big one, and there's some different issues that some of the departments in our city are having, from funding that's keeping them from doing some of those things that could help with these public safety issues. And so I would definitely be in favor of funding those things if we need to get some more personnel on board, within reason, obviously. Definitely a big one that's kind of been on my plate for a really long time is the unfortunate increase in the youth gun violence in our city. And so I would definitely be in favor of using any funds that the city may be able to help LPD and any other entities that may be able to help with that.
Sure. We've seen, I know on TV and other places, some of your work with Lubbock Compact over the years. For folks who may not have seen that, can you explain what that is, what you've done there, and some other things you've done in your past?
Yeah, so I guess I could start with just my kind of backstory of how I got into this. It kind of goes all into it. So I was born in East Lubbock, spent most of my life there, started a family young. So at the age of 19, I moved to Waco with my ex-wife and a brand new baby girl to attend Texas State Technical College. And I went to get a degree in digital media design with the intent to build the business that I currently operate today. That's my professional life. And so moved back to Lubbock after I got my degree. Our second daughter was born in 2004. From that time, I worked jobs until I built the business to a point to where it was sustainable on its own. That happened in 2008, and so I've been self-employed in that way since that time. And so The summer of 2020 is when I got involved in community advocacy. I became a co-founder and the communications chair of Lubbock Compact. And so over the past 2 years in that role, I've been heavily involved in local policy processes on behalf of communities across Lubbock. And so what we do in Lubbock Compact is we're kind of a go-between between the city council and city boards and the average citizen who just either doesn't have time to keep up with these things or is just not very informed about them. And so we inform them about policies that are going on that may affect them, letting them know to vote or to go make public comment if that needs to happen. And so that's a lot of the work we do.
And a lot of work directly with the council. So
Right.
Tell me about how that has sort of got you in line with a lot of just the process of being on the city council, being a mayor potentially, and making some of that happen, those things happen.
Yeah, it's been really enlightening. I've really enjoyed the process. I mean, I really dug in, and like I said, for the last 2 years, I've attended I don't know how many city council meetings, most of them, made public comments at many of them. Also just sat and listened in some, watched those processes. I've also been attending LEDA meetings and things like that. So trying to just learn as much as I can about the duties that a potential mayor would have, as well as it goes hand in hand with the work that I do in the community.
Sure, sure. I asked one of your opponents about this a couple of weeks ago, about a couple of the issues that are going to be a part of the council's main agenda over the next few months, and I want to do the same for you here. They're working now on a street bond package once again. Where would you stand on that and where it needs to be if it comes back to a vote in November, and specifically on Broadway as well, which is a big contentious point for a lot of people?
Sure, yeah, so Broadway is the most contentious part, obviously, but as far as the rest of it, these are very serious needs for our city, and those are also public safety issues. Some of those roads need to be widened, and Lubbock Fire Department will tell you that, LPD will tell you that. Some of these are very serious public safety issues, and so they still need to be done. And so from the beginning, our stance on it, and this is public record as well, was we expressed to the council that they should have the citizens involved from the very beginning, so that it could be a discussion with the citizens, so that you wouldn't end up with a situation where there's miscommunications and then they're eventually voting it down, because there just was a lot of miscommunications that were happening. But we are still very much in favor of it. I'm still very much in favor of it. As far as bringing it back, I don't know how well it's going to work. You know, kind of the damage is kind of already done in that area. But I would definitely be in favor of doing it.
As far as things like that go, though, it is difficult sometimes, we've talked about it a lot on the show, to put forth a message and get people to pay attention to a lot of things. Any ideas on how that could work better?
Well, you know, and the city is trying to do some of this, but I think just them continuing to try to progress in the goal of outreach. They have to be able to be more effective in their outreach. There may be some gaps there that they're not seeing, but I do see them trying. And so there's not a silver bullet, if you will, for that. It's just a process, and the city kind of would need to make a concerted effort to continue to get citizens involved.
Of course, there's also talk about the next step in the ERCOT changeover in 2023 being allowing people to choose their own power providers at that point. Some potential pitfalls to go with the good things that would go along with that. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I do like choice in any market, because obviously competition creates better outcomes for consumers. But like you said, there are some hangups there that I'm not too sure about, but the train has kind of already left the station on that, unfortunately, and so we just kind of have to wait and see how it plays out. But I'm hoping that the competition leads to better outcomes for consumers.
Could be more of those situations where getting people interested in making a good message for people on this kind of stuff about the pros and cons could be important.
Right.
All right. Adam Hernandez, candidate for Lubbock Mayor. Come back on soon. Good luck with the campaign.
Thanks for having me.
And coming up, an opportunity for you to get more into local government without that whole running for office thing. And a lot of talk about the state's new voting rules, including problems with mail-in ballots and other confusion. We'll try to sort it all out for you when Texas Secretary of State John Scott stops by for 5 good minutes. Next on Talking Points.